In case if you're tuning in for the first time in this Versus series, I, Gexup, have been making this Versus series for months now and wanted to see which company do I feel is better, Naughty Dog versus Insomniac Games. I strongly encourage you all to watch the other Naughty Dog versus Insomniac Games video from beginning up to here before watching till this one. Until then, I have to finish this Versus series right now. Oh god, what am I gonna do? I only have two choices to declare a winner. It's almost like choosing which twin is better because they're almost exactly the same. To be honest, I don't think that there were ever two separate companies that has put out so many similarities and references toward one another that it's hard to look at one game and try to ignore the other that exist. They've been doing it for 3 generations of consoles and over a decade now. Let's go all the way back to when they were starting to do references toward one another. That's right, all the way back to the 90s with Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. I mean, to this day, when people talk about Crash Bandicoot, no matter how much or how little they know about the series, there's always a little thought of Spyro the Dragon in it. Crash Bandicoot started way back when they were trying to make good PS1 exclusives, and Crash had no other competition but Sega's Sonic and Nintendo's Mario. Crash Bandicoot was Sony's #1 mascot, but when Crash was going to make the final platformer for the PlayStation 1, Spyro became the PlayStation 1's mascot until the end of the lifespan. Throughout all these years and still to this day, Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon has been talked to death, even when Sony, Naughty Dog, and Insomniac gave up both of the series. Whenever you hear a reviewer who knows little of Naughty Dog or Insomniac, they'll always give you at least a sentence that they were the creators of those series. It still surprises me to this day that the people who grew up with Crash and Spyro still talks about them, whether or not they hate how they evolved into a direction by the hands of the other developers that were not made by Naughty Dog or Insomniac Games. Even professional reviewers have some fond memories with Crash and Spyro. No matter how much they try to move on with life, once you know Crash and Spyro, they will always be embedded in your skull. It's a shame that many of my favorite reviewers pretends that they never existed and talk about other games during modern time because they're trying to be quote-unquote professional because they are no longer with Sony's rights and want to move on with life. But no matter how many of them tried, they will always remember the name Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. Why, you may ask? Because they are mascots, and mascots will always be advertisements, and advertisements will always be the part of brainwashing that will stick in your skull. That's why so many people who has some knowledge of Sega, they will always forever remember Sonic the Hedgehog. You can't escape from it. There will always be part of your gaming childhood, and they will always be crawling back for nostalgia. But we have to thank these two genius video game companies, Naughty Dog and Insomniac, for bringing them to us, the gamers. But for reasons unknown, they abandoned Crash and Spyro and moved on with their next upcoming series known as Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank. Usually I would be a Crash and Spyro nostalgic whore, wishing that Naughty Dog and Insomniac Games would have made more of Crash and Spyro games just like back in the 90s. But in a way, as I played Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank, it began to grow in me to know that Naughty Dog and Insomniac needed to start these new series, Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank, because Crash and Spyro, if they were ever to continue the series, I doubt that they would have any gameplay innovation or evolve the 3D platforming genre. To me, what I like about RNC and J&D over Crash and Spyro is that they were the evolution of 3D platforming genre. Look at Crash and Spyro. As much as I had fond memories with the original trilogy, if Naughty Dog and Insomniac were to keep going with the series, then it will become old and tiresome. But as other genres such as shooters are becoming more popular in consoles, we started to have less 3D platformers as we usually had. But Ratchet and Jak still stuck with the old school style of 3D platforming and mixed it with other genres that are popular today. That's the reason why the Jak and Ratchet series were really strong in the PlayStation 2 days, and other 3D platformers did not succeed as much as they would have had back in the 90s. But Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank kept the name platformer and evolved it with the shooter and other genres and made some of the most epic games ever. I consider Jak and Daxter and Ratchet & Clank underrated because, quote-unquote, professional critics doesn't see the series as a whole, but ignores them and goes off for something overhyped. It's a shame that big names and quote-unquote professional reviewers never acted as though series were ever important. I mean seriously, that's the reason why I think that 3D platforming genre is dying just like the adventure genre. Most importantly, I really think that Naughty Dog and Insomniac games are really underrated because people these days who know those two video game companies only recognize them as the creators of Uncharted and Resistance. I think that's the reason why I started this Naughty Dog versus Insomniac game series is because both of those video game companies are not really recognized for all they've done for Sony. So I have to step in and do something that has never been done before because both of these companies deserves a lot of appreciation for what we have today. I see the platforming genre a very important genre because they were the first ones that innovated video games into fully rendered 3D before any other genre did, and without Mario 64, we wouldn't have all of this. But as we are starting to have less and less, it's really hard to find the old school style of 3D platforming and mascots like before. The reason why I switched back to Naughty Dog and Insomniac and 3D platforming is because Naughty Dog and Insomniac were the video game companies that took the 3D platforming genres in the 6th generation very seriously and made very creative and original concepts with it. I think the reason why we don't have platformers like Gex, Rayman, Banjo-Kazooie, Conker, DK, and so much more because of those overrated shooters that has no innovation or creativity in them. But that's the reason why I admire Naughty Dog and Insomniac games so much until they took it way too seriously on the PS3 when they departed their ways and gave into these overhyped games into the same spotlight. So guess what? It's even harder to find any 3D platformers besides Mario. So yeah, enjoy your millions of dollars you earned by abandoning Jak and Ratchet, because guess what? Uncharted and Resistance is nowhere near as good as Jak and Ratchet. I mean, I had a lot more fun transforming into Dark and Light Jak than Leap, Shoot, Puzzle. Leap, Shoot, Puzzle. And I also had a lot more fun blowing up people and evolving my weapons than having Modern Warfare turn into sci-fi. I mean, sure, Jak and Ratchet for their time were in the spotlight and they had all the hype, but at least they were original compared to other games out there. Uncharted, you can already guess that it's Gears and Tomb Raider mixed together, and Resistance is Modern Warfare turned into sci-fi. I do admit that Uncharted and Resistance are a lot more creative than games nowadays, but they were nowhere near as epic as Jak and Ratchet. So I'm addressing that I don't hate these games, I'm just disappointed compared to Ratchet and Jak. This really dumbed down Naughty Dog and Insomniac games for their reputation of creativity. But this really pisses me off when they always fucking abandon their series every time they jump to another console. Sure, I thought it was necessary for Crash and Spyro, but Jak and Ratchet? You gotta be fucking kidding me. Same goes for Sucker Punch when they were doing the Sly Cooper series and doing a very good job in a matter of fact, but they turned it down for Infamous on their jump on the PS3. Is the PS3 really about dark and edgy exclusives that they have no choice but to put them out and make a sale? It's painful to watch these games nowadays, and people are pretending that these games are good because of the level of violence. Okay, so let's all dissect the puppy because it's more fun than doing paintball outside, isn't it? I'm just infuriated with Naughty Dog and Insomniac, not because I'm a Ratchet and Jak fanboy, because I'm not a fanboy in any way. It's because they brought it to a level of creativity into a genre where we don't have as much and keeps the genre going, but instead abandoned the creativity that I crave to see in video games and made less creative stuff. I'm sorry, I just can't look at Resistance or Uncharted as revolutionary games because compared to the other stuff, they look like clones of another game. I guess I have to name Naughty Dog the winner of this competition. Not because I prefer Uncharted games over Resistance, but they kept the platforming elements and Resistance has no platforming whatsoever. So without further ado, I have to name the winner of Naughty Dog vs. Insomniac games to not...
Wait a minute, have you checked out all the games?
I told you, stop interrupting me when I'm on the mic. And what do you mean all the games? Of course I did all the games from round 1 to 10.
What about today's games?
What are you talking about? It's Uncharted and Resistance.
Just Uncharted and Resistance?
If you're thinking about Jak and Ratchet, you're sadly mistaken, my friend, because those were made by high-impact games and those are poor, watered-down versions compared to the originals made by Naughty Dog and Insomniac games.
But what about the Future series?
What Future series?
You mean you haven't played the Ratchet & Clank Future series?
No, because those were made by Insomniac?
Duh, High Impact Games can't afford high revolutionary quality. I can't believe you missed out on Ratchet and Clank Future games.
Oh, okay. Can I do a Ratchet Future series versus the Uncharted series?
Well, do what you can to break us off this tie.